October 30th, 2015. You're looking at an ice core sample from Greenland. I'm going to call this series the 3600-year Comet Impact Cycle. And what they've found in these cores is layer upon layer at 3600-year intervals of the Earth becoming under great distress. What is clear is that whatever comes at 3600-year intervals, as shown by the ice cores, is capable of setting off prolonged periods of Earth changes that are above the levels of ordinary geologic and climate changes. In an article in Nature November 80th, Hammerclaws and Dansgaard data disturbance from the Camp Century Core to 5470 BC plus or minus 120 years. This compares to the proposed Helke eruption, which was radiocarbon dated to 5450. There is an appreciable high acidity signal at these sections of the core, which indicates a high level of volcanic activity, again right at the 3600-year cycle mark. It's important because there's events that these comets can cause due to impact, breaking apart, causing multiple debris impacts that can trigger earthquakes that can release volcanic activity. Looking further, Michael Legrand and Robert Delmas of the Laboratory of the Glacials at Geophysics Environment published an article, Soluble Impurities in 4 Antarctic Ice Cores over the last 30,000 years. They graph that oxygen-18 variations in ionic components, you can read these, NaNH4Ca2, HCO2, SO4, the time scale for each ionic component level as well as the O18 levels stretches back 30,000 years. That's as far as they could get in the ice cores. The graph shows correlations to spikes. Pay attention, 5200 BC, 8800 BC, 12,400 BC, 1960 BC. All of these were times of great geologic distress. They are 3,600-year periods. Now, the last one that they talk about at 5200 BC that they recorded, again in the Arctic, Greenland. If you take 3,600 years from that, and again, these are general dates. You've got 1600 BC. They're showing 3,600 intervals, though, of this time of the geologic stress on our planet. Now, what would have happened if that's not included in Greenland in the ice cores? It would have had to be something that struck the southern hemisphere. I did a video on this a couple years ago. I'll try to find it and link it. It had to do with the Ming Dynasty. This dynasty ruled between 1368 and 1644. What did I just say? Around the time of 1600. But again, you're looking at plus or minus 120 years or so. Following the collapse of the Mongol-led Yuan dynasty, the Ming described as one of the greatest eras of orderly government and social stability in human history. What happened, though, God was not going to let them take over the southern hemisphere and eventually the world. They did not believe in Christ. They were becoming the new world power, and he destroyed them. And he did it in around 1450, according to the estimates. And what happened, and that I did a video on, again, is the fleet of the Chinese that got took out in around 1450, south of Australia and in the New Zealand area. So with this information, we can fill in that gap after 5200, bringing us up to the 1600 or so BC era. It says, when did these events occur? It says in 1450 AD, the catastrophic comet Mahuka descended upon the coast of New Zealand, reputed to be 26 times as bright as the sun. Now remember, these Chinese astrologers were very well versed in what they were doing. It discharged electrically and shattered Admiral Zhu Man's Chinese fleet of some 60 ships. Again, that was the admiral during the Ming Dynasty. The fleet supported a thriving Chinese colony of Han, Tang, and Song, mining gold, jade, antimony in New Zealand. The comet's screaming noise blew out the sailors' eardrums. They received horrific burns. Earthquakes, gigantic waves that could have been more than 200 meters tossed the ships upside down like matchsticks, while the intense heat caused the mast and rigging to catch fire. Zhu Man's wrecked hulks hurtle across the seas to New Zealand and southeast Australia, fanned by 600-kilometer-per-hour winds. These large Chinese junks, guys, and they were huge. These were not like pilgrim ships. These were larger than football fields. They were flung ashore all across West Australia, New Zealand, even as far, some reported, as Easter Island. Now, each cycle may not be as devastating as the other. Again, this is Southern Hemisphere. We're talking about the Greenland ice cores. And remember the video last night where there's 60 or 61 years in these cycles within the stream of the comets? Well, they also talk about a 3,600-year cycle. That goes back to ancient cuneiform tablets, to where they used their digits was 60 times 6, 360, all the way up to 3,600. Those digits still, and that count still, is here with our 60 seconds and 60-minute count. You understand what I'm saying? The 3,600 was called a SAR. 3,600-year cycle, that's what they called it. 1990, Victor Clubb, an astrophysicist, and Bill Napier, an astronomer, published The Cosmic Winter, a book in which they describe performing orbital analysis of several of the meteor showers that hit Earth every year. We talked about this briefly last night. Using sophisticated computer software, they carefully looked back for thousands of years. They were tracing the orbits of comets, asteroids, and meteor showers until they uncovered something astounding. In our videos over the last few years, we've been putting these pieces together, but it says many meteor showers are related to one another, such as the Taurids. That's what we're going through now. The Perseids, Pisces, and Orionids. In addition, some of the very large cosmic objects are related. We said this, Comet Encke, other comets, the asteroids, and about 100 others. Every one of these 100-plus cosmic bodies is at least a half mile in diameter, and some are miles wide. And what do they have in common? According to those scientists, every one is the offspring of the same massive comet that first entered our system less than 20,000 years ago. Clubb and Napier calculated that to account for all the debris they found strewn throughout our solar system, the original comet had to be enormous. Guys, I'm almost through with part 2, and it just gets better. Guys, did you know we're right close to that 3,600-year cycle right now? We're talking about being at the 61-year period or so of the intense Taurid meteor shower. Don't forget, and in part 2, which I'm almost finished with, possibly tonight, if not first thing in the morning, this thing gets better and better. The proof becomes stacked upon itself. Don't forget, what did the first angel do at the first trumpet? There was fire and hailstone cast to the earth. The first trumpet. That's when they begin to sound. Guys, part 2 is going to be very good. Heads up, be safe.